Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Beyond Exodus podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Petrellis, and we are excited for our eighth episode. And not only our eighth episode, but a great eighth guest. The head girls soccer coach at Arlington Catholic High School, entering his seventh season, was a one-time assistant coach of the year in the CCL. Somebody who I got to meet through the Arlington Catholic community, coaching football there. Tremendous coach, tremendous teacher, tremendous guy, and someone who I just thought to have on the show that would give great knowledge to coaches. He's coached at a lot of different places, coached a lot of different sports, and really just understands how to work with adolescents, work with high school kids. So ladies and gentlemen, John Bolero.
Hey coach, how's it going? Thanks for having me on, man.
Of course, anytime. And another great thing about John is, when I coach football at Arlington Catholic, John was our announcer for the games.
Yes.
And, you're so focused into the game, but all I would hear after the game is how great of an announcer we had at our football games, no matter who came.
Yeah, the Golden Pipes. Hopefully be back out there in February for this season. I can't wait. I love doing it.
Awesome, man. So, John has held a lot of titles, and, like I said, he's currently the head girls soccer coach at Arlington Catholic High School. And so, John, I'm just going to kind of give you a minute to really talk about, your coaching career, because I know you've moved from place to place in different parts of the state. And you were coaching all over the place. So I'm going to give you a little time to kind of introduce yourself and talk about your coaching experience.
Sure, coach. So I started out actually in Worcester at a really small high school. It's where I started my teaching career. So I've been coaching about, a month longer than I've been teaching, because as you know, the fall season starts before school actually starts. So I opened up, I was the girls JV coach at a small school, St. Mary's High School in Worcester. It's a 7th through 12th, it's a junior senior high school. And I was there for 3 years. I was the JV coach for 2 years, and then the varsity coach in my 3rd year. While I was there, I also got roped in to coaching baseball. Like I said, it's a really small school. We had about 20 kids per class, per grade. So, looking for people, you wore a lot of hats. So I coached soccer, and then I also coached baseball, which I had never played. I played soccer all growing up, and through high school, had a good varsity career at Malden Catholic. Didn't continue in college. I went to Providence, so I wasn't quite a D1 athlete. Went education over athletics at that point, but I was happy to get back into it. And then when I decided to leave Worcester and move a little bit back closer to home, I was lucky enough actually to land at my alma mater for 1 year. I was at MC teaching and coaching, and I coached the freshman boys soccer team there, and I was also the JV lacrosse coach. So I got pulled into another sport I had never played, but was asked to coach, and just kind of got into lacrosse that way. Unfortunately, at the end of that year, I wasn't rehired at MC because of staff cutbacks, and I was lucky enough to land at Arlington Catholic, where I've been the last 11 years. And I started out there as the JV boys soccer coach and assistant boys varsity lacrosse coach. I also coached freshman basketball for 3 years, boys basketball. And after my 4th year coaching the JV, as the assistant boys coach, I wound up putting my name in and applying for the girls varsity job. That position opened up, and I applied and got it. I've been the varsity coach ever since, the last 7 years, coaching there.
That's great, and for, people like, I got to know John personally through, my time at Arlington Catholic. Is just, we talk about kids educating themselves and playing different sports and keeping themselves competitive and training their body in different ways. And, coaches educate themselves in the off season, but it's also great to see coaches coach other sports, because again, you're put in some more competitive situations and, tight situations, and having to make decisions and substitutions and all of that. So, coaching a lot of different sports for a coach is great too. Even if you're not super familiar with the sport, you learn over time, you educate yourself like you do in any other sport. So I've always kind of admired that about you, is just how much knowledge you have in sports and coaching kids and dealing with, everything, the entire athlete, not just the athletic side of them, but the mental aspect of it, and so on and so forth. So let me ask you, you coach as an assistant at Arlington Catholic, and you apply for the head coaching job for the girls soccer team. Talk about being an educator in the school and applying for a head coaching job, because to me that's kind of scary, right? Because in a way,
Yeah,
you're trying to make a name for yourself, and what happens if you don't get hired for that and you start to think about your job? Like, so talk about that process a little bit.
for sure. Right. It's such a unique kind of process to go through, because what you're doing is, first of all, you have this relationship that you've built up, or I had this relationship that I built up over the 4 years coaching the boys with a head coach who I'd gotten to know. And, he understood I was, looking to move up, and he had a son in the program who was young. So I knew it was at least a couple of years before he was going to look to move on. So I jumped at that chance. And it's scary. That's a good word for it, or at least nerve wracking, thinking like, here I am, I'm in a spot, I'm comfortable, but I want to try to, better my situation and better myself, and take over a program and do something on my own and do something a little different than what I'm doing. And that process at AC was great, but at the same time, I went into it knowing there is a chance that they're not going to hire me. That they went through a full interview process. I interviewed with our athletic director, Mr. Shine, as kind of the first round of interviews. Explained to him my thought process behind why I wanted to make that leap and go back to coaching girls, which is where I started my coaching career. And then after that interviewed with the principal and the dean of students, who was a former soccer coach himself, the dean of students, Mr. Graceffa. So he's a soccer guy, and went through that process. And again, I was, lucky enough that they trusted me with the program, and I've been able to do it for so long. But yeah, breaking away from the boys, obviously, some of those guys that I coached on varsity for a couple of years, I was still in the school, for those couple of years after, there was a little bit of that, like, you left us or you moved on, but eventually they got it. They understood what it was. And then, working with some of my students who were the female athletes for the first time, because they had known me as a boys coach, right? They didn't necessarily know my background in girls sports. They kind of saw it as, or were nervous. They weren't sure what to expect. So there was definitely a feeling out process as you went, and you weren't, there was, I was really lucky the way it worked out. I'm happy the way it worked out, but at the time it's always kind of scary to take that risk, take that leap into something new when you're in a spot that you're good and that you're comfortable in.
Yeah. And I think betting on yourself, at the end of the day, you're betting
For
on
sure.
yourself with the knowledge that you have and the experience that you have,
Yeah.
making that jump over from boy sports to girl sports, where you had that familiarity was also, an easy adjustment for you. But let's talk about that adjustment, John, because
Sure.
coaching boys and girls, I mean, I've had several guests on here that have, kind of gone in being like, I want to be a boys coach, and they end up being a girls coach and having a lot of success doing it. So you jump over from one side to the other, and obviously there is some difference, but talk about coaching staff wise, because obviously you got to hire a number two right there. So was it someone that you were coaching with previously, or did you say, I want to go out and find the best person, or were you hoping for alumni? Talk about your decision-making when it comes to hiring a coaching staff.
Sure, right. Because obviously you always want the best person for your situation, right? And the best person for your program, whoever that could be. So when I got the job, I was kind of starting at ground zero, right? The former coach was leaving, his head assistant left and got a job at Watertown. So I was kind of starting, from bare bones. And the first person who I hired was the former JV coach, Coach Maria, who was an AC alum and had played college soccer at the University of Scranton. And so I promoted her from JV coach. She came in, she met with me, she interviewed with me, and we got to talking, and we realized we had a lot of the same philosophy and ideas of what Arlington Catholic soccer should be. And it worked out really well. I thought it was important that she was an alum, and the girls kind of look at her and say, she was here, right? She was an Arlington Catholic soccer player. and that, to have a female on staff, right? To be a man coaching a girl's sport is challenging at times, and it's good to have that female ear that players can go to and feel comfortable going to.
Yeah, and I think that's important in any sport, right? You always want to have a number two in there that, is a hard worker, knows what they're doing, and obviously
Yep.
the experience. And again, I know through the world of football, but in soccer, it's probably 2 to 3 coaches, I'm guessing at most, that you really
Yeah.
have in your program. So, you really have to be pinpoint with what you're going after, what you want to have on your staff, and most
Yeah.
importantly, what you want to have work with, these young girls as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, for us, we usually have 3. It's usually 2 with the varsity team and 1 with the junior varsity team. And then, so when I was filling out even the coaching staff my first year, looking for a JV coach, I was sending out feelers everywhere. And one of the difficult parts about filling a high school coaching position are the hours, right? You're asking someone to be available from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock every work day during the 2-month span of the season. Oh, by the way, there are going to be days where the bus leaves at 1:45 so that we can get down to Brockton for a 3:30 game, and we're probably not going to get home till 7 o'clock at night, right? So you're trying to find someone who not only is qualified and enthusiastic and has the same philosophy, but also has those afternoons free. So that is a constant challenge. Well, I was sending feelers out all over the place for a JV coach, and actually wound up staying in house with someone who kind of like me with lacrosse and with baseball. He wasn't a soccer guy. This Coach Monroe, who's a science teacher and was our JV lacrosse coach. And he came, and I was having trouble finding someone where the hours could fit, especially with like alumni and other soccer coaches. And he came and he said, I'd love to try it. He was new to the school. He had been hired the year before. And he was like, I'd love to get more involved. And I took a chance on him at that position, and he thrived and he flourished. And he jokes now that he's a soccer guy now, and he never thought he would be, right? Seven years later.
Yeah, and Coach Monroe, I love Coach Monroe. I think he's a good guy, great
guy.
But let's kind of stay on that. So obviously, number one most important thing, to you is really to go out specifically hiring a female coach right when you at first got your job.
Absolutely.
What was your short-term goals, Coach, as far as getting into a program, making it your own? What was some of the short-term goals that you had when you got that job right away and wanted to meet your team and implement kind of your philosophies?
Yeah, I think the short-term goals for me at the time was all about program philosophy and kind of changing the culture, or continuing some of that competitive culture that Coach Manny had started, but also then adjusting it and changing it to kind of my view of competition for all seasons and all athletes. They had kind of gotten into a spot where if, you weren't on varsity by your sophomore year, you kind of just, knew it wasn't going to happen. And I wanted to make sure that they understood right away that, spots weren't safe, that this was going to be competition all 4 years, that progress was going to be rewarded and hard work was going to be rewarded. So I wanted to make sure that was instilled right away in the program. And in my first year, I did that. There were girls who came out who had been juniors on JV, who I promoted to varsity as their senior year, and that was kind of like an eye opener for some people, right? And I left a few on JV who probably thought they had a spot waiting for them, right? So kind of that culture disruption to kind of bring that new philosophy of, if I improve every year, if I put in the work in off season, there is a chance for me and there's going to be a spot for me down the road, to keep them engaged for as long as possible, because not everyone's going to be a varsity athlete, right? Not everyone, at some point, your playing career ends, whether it's, at youth or at JV or freshman or at high school varsity or in college or beyond, right? We all everyone's career has a point, but I wanted to make sure that they knew that I would give them the chance to to work hard and get there. And I think it's benefited us greatly over the last 7 years. Keeping that JV team competitive, where it's, they know they're coming to work just as much as the varsity team.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously that's your feeder program, right? So in the sense you're trying to
Absolutely.
instill everything into having these girls being able to fill in. And, coaching at AC for a long time with you, I mean, the same thing in the football world, right? So when it comes to girls soccer, or just soccer in general, like I know in high school football, we're looking to utilize everybody on our roster, right? So we have some guys that might come in for dime situations on defense, or come in for more blocking situations on offense, or, as a true special teams guy. We really try to find as many roles as possible. When you're looking through your bench and you're looking through the depth that you have, is that a similar philosophy in soccer, that you might have somebody come in who's a tougher defender versus somebody comes in who's a little faster to get some speed on the field? Talk about the strategy of coaching soccer and how you go about really like utilizing your roster.
Yeah, that's a great question, Anthony. So, for me, for soccer, the most important thing is to have depth at every position, because you don't know what's going to happen. I've lost starters to injuries, short-term and long-term. You don't know what's going to happen on a day-to-day basis. Even just going in my first year, we had a great athlete, Mo Buckley, who's a basketball star, who tore her ACL playing summer league basketball. And she was penciled in. Everyone said, this girl's going to be your starting center mid. Here she is. And so right away, that was kind of thrown into a loop. So to make sure that you have someone competitive working behind the starters, because the substitution patterns in soccer are very different than like a football or a hockey where you're rolling lines. For me, I don't sub like in the back. My defense knows like the starting for that game, who I've kind of determined matchup, it definitely is, like you said, matchup based. I know I've played against teams in my league enough. I know, okay, this is a fast team up top. We got to make sure we have our speed in the back this game. Or this is going to be a shutdown. They're going to go up the wings. We have to shut down the side, right side, left side. But where we start is usually how the game kind of goes, right? But they know they're all going to kind of get their chance. And if an injury happens, they have to be ready to step up. And then for us, the place that I sub the most is probably the midfield, because I ask them to do a lot on the field. They're asked to run all over, right? We play our mids defend and attack, so they're running the whole length of the field all game. So I know I need on my roster, I need 8 competent midfielders, so that we can sub, we can go in, and the key is having them ready. So that there's not a drop in play when the subs come in, right? The subs need to be just as skilled and just as ready as the starters, for sure.
So it's funny. You're really the first coach that I'm actually interviewing that is playing, sport, that is, since COVID, is having a fall season. So talk about it, John. I mean, talk about coaching during COVID times, and just how crazy it's been.
What can I say about the craziness of COVID times? For me, it started in the summer, because I'm our league rep to the Soccer Coaches Association. So I sat in on Zoom meetings with that association all summer, and we were just guessing, right? No one knew what was going to happen in the fall. So we sat in all these meetings. We're guessing as to what the rules were going to be. We're guessing as to what we were going to be allowed to do. At what point we're thinking, like, are they going to make us play 7-on-7s? Like, are they going to make us do this, right? It's like we're just like trying to think, what in the world is this going to look like? And then when the regulations came out and some of the rule changes came out, we had another big one. And there were some coaches who were sitting there going, oh, we should wait till the floating season. We should wait till fall 2 in February, and hopefully we won't have as many restrictions. And luckily, cooler heads prevailed, and most of us went, guys, we don't want to play soccer in February, right? We live in New England, right? We know what the field, what the weather situation is like in February, and there's no guarantee that it'll be any less restrictive. So luckily, I'm so happy that we're playing right now, right? That even with all the restrictions and the rule changes, and it feels like such a, we can talk a little bit of some of those more specific ones, but it's like really stop start, because there are more whistles and more calls. and the flow of the game has been disrupted a little bit. With all of that being, and the masks, the girls wear masks the entire game. With all that being said, we're on the field and we're playing, and we're playing the sport that we're supposed to be playing, and it feels different, and it's crazy, and the arguments that I've gotten in with refs are different than the ones that I've gotten in the past. I'm like, are you sure she didn't have her hand on her back there? She's not supposed to be touching her there. That's really, I think that was intentional hand to back contact, right? These things I never thought I'd be saying, or calls I never thought I'd be trying to argue for are out there, but we're definitely happy to be playing. The craziest part for us probably was the tryout process. So we go in, now school had already started. Normally, like I mentioned earlier, the fall season starts before school does. So it's a good chance to kind of get on the field. You've got the whole day to kind of split the field, especially, we have a unique situation at AC where we have one field for 3 teams, for 3 programs, really, more than 3 teams when you think about boys soccer, girls soccer, and football. So having all those hours in the day to split, to do double sessions, to kind of get an extended practice, an extended tryout, an extra scrimmage in, right? That was taken away, and I felt that. I felt the time crunch for sure during tryouts, where I didn't feel like I was getting the things done that I normally would get done in a tryout process, right? Because you just don't have the same time. You just don't have the same, just the same hours that you would if you get to my normal first 2 days are double sessions where we go 7:30 to 9, and then we're back on the field 11 to 1, right? And instead we're going a normal 3 to 4:30 after school, after the kids have been out there in school or remote, like on the computer all day. So it's that was probably one of the bigger adjustments. Also, at the beginning of the season, what they had asked us to do was to pod students, to keep them in the same small groups. So within the tryout roster, before you even get to make any evaluations, you're kind of putting kids together by age, and then you can't move those for a week, so you have to kind of keep them there for the week, and then you can start making those adjustments and making those teams. And it wasn't until team selection or until after team selection that you really got to mix that up a little bit. So there was definitely wrinkles in the evaluation process, wrinkles in the just that whole trial process that you never foresee.
I mean, it sounds miserable, actually.
It was miserable. And it was one of those things where you're happy you're out there, but it's all the other stuff. I say that in both teaching and coaching. I say it all the time. I say, if it's just in the classroom or just on the field, that's the easy stuff, right? That's the stuff we love to do, right? That time in the classroom, that's easy. When you're on the field coaching, running a practice or running a game, that's the stuff you love to do. It's all the other stuff that comes around the field or around the classroom that starts to kind of weigh on you. And COVID regulations were just another thing to worry about. When I was planning my first practice, I made my list of like everything to talk to my players about, right? And you usually have, what the plan for the week is, and, team rules, and, things like that. And it was just all COVID regulations. Talk to them about the new rules, talk to them about the restrictions, talk about the masks, talk about the pods, talk about this, talk about that. And our principal, Mr. Graceffa, popped in my room the day of the first tryout, and he just said, "Hey, John, you're going to talk to them about Rule 62 in hazing today, right?" I was like, "Oh yeah, that's something I also talk about every day on the first day." And it was so far down on my list. It's just like these things that are normal got pushed out of your mind. These things that you do all the time got taken over by these new restrictions, these new rules that you just, what can you do? It's just, it's all over the place.
Yeah, and I think that's so tough because again, like you're
Yeah,
trying to put a product on the field and you're really
yeah,
and from the other aspect of it, you're also trying to develop again, you mentioned your JV program earlier. Like you're also trying to develop your team for whatever a season's going to look like next the
yeah,
following year. So really trying to
absolutely.
develop your younger players is an important aspect of any season, but now you're adding all these things on the front of the list, and some of these things that are typically on the front of the list are now slowly making their way deep into
Yeah,
a list. So
yeah,
I don't envy you coaches right now in
no,
the world that you're living in. But let's talk a little bit about those rule changes because I
sure.
know that some of these like just to hear like you're like, oh, I'm having a different conversation with the ref about me putting my hand on the girl's shoulder or back. Like, are you sure there wasn't contact there? Where in a regular game they're bumping into each other, sliding, knocking each
Yes,
other down, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
um,
absolutely.
talk about those rule changes. I know some
Sure.
have benefited you. So talk a little bit about some of
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Right. Yeah. Some have been challenges, and some we've been able to take advantage of. Right. So some of those rule changes that we've taken advantage of, I think one has been the new indirect kick, no throw in, and corner kick rule, where now instead of being able to, I know soccer talk, but an indirect kick is just a kick where the ball has to hit another player before it goes in the net. So now all those have to be played short on the ground. First, you can't just kind of throw it in the box and hope it hits a body. And that's actually benefited us a lot because what it does, what it's allowed us to do is put the ball on the foot with a short play of our better players, right? Where we're able to kind of create things after the fact, right? Where we can put the ball down, look up, play it short to some of our better players who can kind of then make something happen afterwards, right? And then the other that we've taken advantage is the new corner kick rule. In the same vein, corner kicks, which if you've watched high school soccer or any level of soccer, you just kind of hammer the ball into the box and hope for a good header. That's no longer the case. You also have to play a corner kick short on the ground before you can kind of go in. So we've developed a good system in practice and identifying some of our better players of actually improving the angle using that short corner in for making the corner a shot on goal. We've scored directly on it, and we've scored off of kind of the havoc and the rebound that it's caused. We've scored at this point 4 goals off corner kicks in our 11 games, and it's been a good little weapon to have, where in the past it's you're in the past you've created 50-50 balls, and it's one of those things where you think, now I'm like, okay, that's going to be something going forward that maybe we keep as an option, right?
right.
For
You
sure.
practice it a lot. You practice
Oh yeah,
a lot of it.
absolutely. You practice it all the time. You basically and when we used to split the field with football, we would basically gradually work our practice down to the corner. We'd start with half the field, and then football would take a little bit more. So we'd move down, we'd work on free kicks and some stuff, and eventually we'd be basically to the 18, and we would work on corners and PKs for the last 15-20 minutes of practice. And we don't do that now because obviously football is not in season, but that same kind of, as far as like shortening the field, but that same philosophy, right? We still want to make sure we're working on those set pieces in like the last 20 minutes of every practice, just to make sure we're ready when it pops up in a game. And it's definitely been something that we've been able to take advantage of. Some of the tougher ones and some of the things that every team is dealing with
I was
are
going to
those like
ask you, yeah,
yeah,
talk about it.
every team. Yeah, are some of those contact rules, man. And these are the things is driving coaches crazy, players crazy. And you can see it in the conversations I've talked with officials. It's driving them crazy too, because they don't necessarily want to make these kind of, in like basketball, you call them like tic-tac foul calls. But they have to, and it's for, safety. It's what we determined is the safest way to play it. So now there's no intentional contact, period. Right? Offensively or defensively. You can't intentionally make contact with another player's torso, right? And that's leaning in, kind of trying to bully someone off the ball, shoulder to shoulder. It's using your arm to try and gain position. It's intentionally backing into a player to try and improve your position. All these things have kind of been taken away. So a lot more 50-50 balls that are just, we're relying on traps. It's led to some players being less aggressive, and it's really benefited teams that are more technically talented, right? The teams where when that can pass and dink and dunk all over the field, and play that kind of club style soccer. It's definitely benefited them because they're not looking. We've played. We're not the most technically talented team. So in the past, we've played kind of like a grit type of game where we're looking to create 50-50s. We're looking to get in there and kind of get dirty and cause a little chaos. And that little bit of chaos is not being rewarded in the way that it used to be. So we've had to totally kind of change our style of game. Much more possession oriented, much more, playing the ball through our central midfielders and up to our striker. I've changed our formation, things like that, to try and take advantage of those roles and adjust to them. And we've had good success with it. We've scored more goals in 12 games this year than we did in our 18 games last year. So we've definitely found some success. Part of that is a maturing thing where I have players who got a lot of minutes last year, and they've taken a step forward and matured. So we've taken kind of that step forward. I'm not going to call it a leap exactly, but definitely a step forward as a team. But yes, it's been interesting, man.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, because you kind of going to hint on something I was just going to really talk to you about. Is you mentioned that you had a lot of girls learning from the previous year that had a lot of minutes in game. Talk about having that experience coming back during a time like this, right? So you're in COVID and things are changing every minute, every day. And, something you get told on a Tuesday is different on a Thursday, right? So talk about having an experienced team coming back to really help you and your coaches out with some of like the on-field things or practice setups and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's been invaluable, Anthony, because I graduated 4 seniors last year from the program. And so I returned 16 players. It would have been 17. I actually had one player who has sat out this year because she's fully remote at home, right? So she's not coming to school. She didn't think it would be right to play soccer when she's not coming in person, which is, just another thing that, we never thought we'd have to deal with as coaches, right? Having to sit down via a Zoom call just like this and have that difficult conversation with a player, right? But having those 16 come back is, one, it made that, as difficult as tryouts and evaluations were for those players who I wasn't as familiar with, I at least knew I had like my core going in, right? I had those returning players who I was comfortable with. And at one point I kind of made the joke that, like, if we just keep the 16, I'm okay with it, right? We'll add on as we need to, but if we just start here, we're okay, right? And then you kind of just hinted at practice with all these things that are going on in a coach's head, all those things off the field, for them to already be familiar with our practice schedule, our practice routine, our warm-up routine, those little things that, when they're done on time and done correctly, just help a practice, help a game day go so much smoother, right? There's no, try. I don't necessarily need to be the person to explain what we're doing in warm-up, even on those first couple games, because the older players, the returning players, they knew, right? They knew going in what they were going to do. They knew what their role was. They had to make an adjustment. Like I mentioned, we changed formation. So one of my captains, who was a starting striker last year, played up top, is now playing in the center midfield. So she made that adjustment, but she was willing. She's doing a great job there. But just having that experience and that leadership has been so helpful for me, especially, in this just crazy time. And we're all kind of learning together, right? We're all adjusting as we go. At this point, we've got it, right? We've played enough games. We kind of know what we're doing. But in the beginning, when we were all making those adjustments at the same time, not having to go backwards to the old stuff made introducing those new regulations, introducing the new stuff that much smoother, right? And it really helped us at the beginning. And allowed us to do things like work on corner kicks, right? Work on the new stuff, because again, the old tactical stuff was already kind of in the bag, or in the back of their minds.
And that's great. So talk to me too a little bit about, you're kind of talking about the leadership that you have, so on and so forth in your program. And I've always kind of admired, like you had mentioned about football and like us splitting the field together. And a lot of times when we got there, I used to just kind of watch your practice. And it's funny that you talked about how your practice changed as like football took more of the field and you guys worked on. And I always really, really looked at your practices and would always say that to myself. Like, he's always really organized. He's pinpoint to the minute. He has them working on a lot of different things in a short period of time. And truthfully, John, some of that stuff I was able to kind of carry over into football to make certain parts of practice a little bit more efficient than they typically were, when I first kind of took over. So, when you talked about that, it really resonated to me, because I used to think that about you a lot. So, it was great to hear you say that.
Thank you.
Talk a little bit about the sacrifices you make. I mean, I named all these different places, and you talked about all these different places that you coach. It comes at a price. It comes at a price of valuable time with family and valuable time with loved ones. And, and especially at a young age, you're making a lot of sacrifices that typically people your age wouldn't, specifically over a weekend or over a course of a day. So talk a little bit about the sacrifices you have made and how that affects your life and how you balance life and coaching all together.
Yeah, no, thanks. That's a great question, and a great, just observation, because it's one of those things that when you're getting into it, maybe you're not thinking about it, right? That when you're 20, I was 22 when I started coaching, right? So when you're 22, you're not like, oh, I'm going to spend, 35 hours a week thinking about soccer, right? But it winds up you do it, right? And it is tough. It's a big commitment, not only the time on the field, but also, at home. I had this conversation with my girlfriend a couple weeks ago. She said, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, I'm planning practice for tomorrow." And she goes, "I never thought of the fact that you have to plan your practices." I'm like, yeah. She's like, "Oh yeah, that's just another thing you do." I was like, "Yep, it's another thing I do." Right. And it's just kind of one of those things that you have to be willing to put that like extra. And it might take a half hour depending on the time, or it might even take just 10 minutes, but putting it on paper and like knowing like this is what I'm going to do tomorrow, or this is what we're going to work on tomorrow. It does, like you said, it makes your life, it makes that practice so much easier the next day. Right. And some people just, that definitely there are times when you have other things going on in your life, right? Besides coaching, besides teaching, right? And you have to make that determination that we're asking our players to take this seriously and to make this a priority, right? How many times do you have that conversation with players where they're like, well, I've got a project to do. You're like, well, you've got to put practice first. Or I've got, a birthday party to go to. Well, you got to put the game first. So we have to ask that of ourselves too. And it leads to some awkward conversations sometimes with friends or family when they say, oh, you're going to come to, my cookout. And it's like, oh, no, I've got a game. Oh, reschedule. Or even worse, oh, I've got to practice. But, especially, over in the two sports I coach, there's some important long weekends there between in the fall, and football coaches know it too. You've got Labor Day and Columbus Day there, where you're not going down the Cape for Labor Day weekend. Sorry, there's a tournament on Saturday and practice Monday afternoon after the cookout, right? Like we're working. Our first game's Friday. We've got to work, and that whole idea of putting that as your priority because it's what you asked them to do. I had a funny one. Probably they're gonna get mad at me because I can't remember how long they've been married. But I was in a wedding. And the bride's reaction when I told her I couldn't come to the rehearsal dinner because I had a game at Archie's that Friday night. She just couldn't understand why my assistant coach couldn't just coach the game. I'm like, no, this is my job. This is, I have asked them to do this. So I'm gonna do it, and this is, the commitment I've made to the program, and I've made to this sport. And yeah, you have to, but people understand eventually, right? And the most important thing is that the more you talk about it and the more you do it, and the more you talk about it with those people, they get it, right? That it's something you love to do, and it's fulfilling, and all is forgiven in the end, right, as you go. But it definitely does put a strain in the moment. And I think that's, you got to work through those at times, because yeah, you're out there, and oh, God forbid those years in lacrosse when we make the tournament and Memorial Day weekend is taken away because we're getting ready for a tournament game in Lax. And yeah, that's supposed to be like the start of the summer. I'm like, sorry, I'm coaching lacrosse. I can't come to the cookout.
Well, and now, day before 4th of July.
Oh man, yeah. We'll see. We'll see. I don't know. Yeah. When I saw that schedule come out, that the spring season was going to go to July 3rd, I thought to myself, well, whatever this one thing, and actually we can kind of circle back is, I don't know if there'll be any MIA state tournaments this year. There wasn't one this fall, and they've already decided there's not going to be a winter. So, whoever is scheduling the Catholic Central League spring tournament, let's just hope it's done before the 2nd of July, because that's going to be a tough conversation if I have to say I'm coaching lacrosse, not going to a 4th of July cookout. That coach.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, with all those sacrifices, John, and we talked about that, there's obviously great moments. Talk to me about maybe one of your prouder moments of coaching, or whether it was a victory, or whether it was just like seeing growth in a team, or just having a conversation with a parent, or something that just made you be like, wow, this sacrifice, this hard work, everything I put into this, it's worth it because of things like this.
Yeah, there's so many over the years, right? And you don't even realize them sometimes till you look back and you kind of think about those moments, or they happen and they feel, bigger than they seem. One for me, just every kind of moment when I realize that a player's made the decision to keep playing, right? And Arlington Catholic isn't sending players off to, Duke or UConn, right? But, I have former players that are playing at Emmanuel and playing at Wheaton and playing at Salem State and playing at Regis, and just every single one that they come and they're so excited when they, get that call or sign that letter or talk to that coach, coach, I'm going to keep playing. I'm going to keep playing. And you love to see that, right? So that's, just such an important thing. And even some that you don't expect. My current assistant, or one of my current assistant varsity coaches, is a former player of mine, and she's one of those students or one of those players who I talked about earlier, who worked her way up through the ranks at AC. She played JV for 2 years, and then was on varsity as a junior and started in the back for me, and then was a captain her senior year, and then played at Suffolk. And I'm just like, that kind of moment where you see what you want, that progress, that working up, and then that decision to keep playing, and just to see how much the sport means and that they've really internalized it, is always great. And then as far as like on field, it might be recency bias, but last year we had a great moment. We didn't make the tournament last year, but we were close, and we needed to win out, which is never easy, right? We went into our last 4 games, and we knew we needed to win them all, and we were rolling. We were ready to go, and I had this game circled against Bishop Fenwick on the calendars, being the hardest of the bunch. They were undefeated in the league. They were going to be the league champs. They had won 8 games in a row. I kind of knew, if we were going to have a hiccup there, it was going to be. And we played them at home. We had lost them earlier in the year, 4-1 up at their place. We played them at home. The girls came out. We were fired up, ready to go, battled hard, played our best game of the season. The game ends in a 0-0 draw. And after that game, it's just like that whole mix of emotions, seeing them go through them all. There's the pride of playing your best and leaving it all on the field and knowing that you were the blotch on their CCL record. They were 11-0-1 and you were the one, right? That feeling. But then that other just gut wrench of this knocked us out. Like this was and we gave it our all and it just wasn't enough. And watching them go through that maturely, I mean, there were definitely tears and definitely, definite disappointment. And we were all kind of just broken up about it. But at the same time, reflecting on it, and we all did what they all at the banquet talked about that game and how important it was for them to just kind of show themselves that, they can play with the best. They can play with the best in the league, and that little bit of pride there. Yeah, that was a great moment for us last year.
And that's a great
that's
because
absolutely.
You're playing a team that, predominantly has been a lot better, and you have to play tough down the line to be able to make the tournament, and you battle with the team that, I mean, I don't know how they did that season, but I'm sure they made a run and they went deep into it. And, for your program, especially bringing back the girls that you're bringing back this year, had this been a normal season with a normal off season and everything else, that's something you built off of. I'm sure you would have had anyway.
Absolutely. And that's and that's why I said I might circle back to it. That was one of the more disappointing things about this season and the COVID shortened, is that we kind of knew going in, we had that hope that, this was going to be a year that the schedule could break the right way and things could break and we could really make a tournament run and do something good. And to have that kind of carrot taken away before the season even started was tough for them. So the moment I told them there's no tournament, like you just see it drain from their bodies, right? That just like, but we were going to be there. But we thought we were going to be there. But this was it, right? We were so close last year, and this year was going to be it. We were building towards that. That's what we were working towards. So that's been a tough thing for this year. But we have a little mini one coming up, starting on the 14th, where we're gonna have a CCL Cup. We're gonna do just a little league tournament. So we're getting ourselves amped up for that. We have a couple more regular season games. We're gonna get amped up. Hopefully, make some noise in the first, and hopefully only ever CCL Cup in replace of the state tournament.
That's cool. I think that's real cool. I think that's cool. Even if it's only a 1-year thing, it's a 1-year thing to say that you have at your school forever, and have it in your display case or trophy case or whatever.
We're going to gun for it. We're going to be ready for it. Yeah.
That's awesome. So, John, it's been great, and just listening to a lot of things that you've been saying today, and some things I've learned about you, and just from this interview that I really didn't know about you, and knowing you for a long time, it's nice to kind of see that different side of you. But last question, before we jump into our 2-minute drill, what's your advice to young coaches? I've been asking a lot of coaches this, and I think for someone who's climbed up the ranks like you did and done it at a lot of different schools, talk to some young coaches, and maybe on top of that, John, applying at a school that you're working at a little bit, like advice for young coaches who might also be kind of looking to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, for young coaches, my biggest piece of advice is just to, keep your eyes and ears open, because every time you step on the field with a different coach, you're going to learn something, right? Every guy or girl that I've coached with, I've taken something from, right? Like my coaching style, my coaching philosophy has a lot of different pieces. It's not all me, right? Some of it is Anthony Petrella, seeing him out there on the field, finding little things to get jacked up about, even if it's not the biggest thing, because he knows that that's what his team needs that day, right? Whatever it is. A lot of it is, my coach from high school, Bill Lanigan, who was my varsity coach, and I still run some of the same drills that he did. And just having that, and also having your eyes and ears open for things that you wouldn't do, right? And maybe not say it, but just keep those in the back of your mind, like, oh, I would have handled that differently. I might not have done it that way. And that helps you kind of build that philosophy, find out the kind of coach that you're going to be. And then also know that it's not going to be perfect right away, right? That it's going to take work, that you have to be committed that if this is something you want to do as a career or as, and move up those ranks, that those hours are going to be there, that you're going to have to put that work in, and that you're going to make mistakes along the way, that the halftime speech that you thought was going to get them ready, they're not going to respond to. Funny random tangent. My first year coaching, I told you the JV team had 7th graders on it. We're playing again. We were pretty good for a JV team, and motivating them, getting them going. We were losing to Bay Path by a goal or so, and get up there and trying to get them going. And I say, you guys are playing like a bunch of 12-year-olds out there. And I don't know why I pulled that number out of my head, but that's what I said. And this girl, Katrina, looks at me. She was a 7th grader. And she just goes, Coach, I am 12. I just started dying laughing. Like, what are you going to do in that moment, right? We started dying laughing. We had that nice moment. I don't remember if we won the game or not, right? I don't know if it worked, but, I'll never forget that. It was just such a funny thing. Like, you're going to make those mistakes. Not everything's going to go the way you think, and you have to be open to it. So just keep your eyes open, keep your ears open, and be willing to take those risks and take those chances, and bet on yourself a little bit at times, like you said earlier. And as far as the applying within, right, and where you work, you can't shy away from it. You have to be willing to have those honest conversations, to really look at yourself and say, is this something that I'm going to be able to live with either way, right? Which when I applied, that was definitely something that I had to think about, right? If I didn't get the job, was I going to be comfortable going back to the boys program as the assistant coach with them knowing that I had applied for the girls? Because it got out, right? As soon as you do it, it goes at small school. As soon as, Mr. Blair applied for the girls job, right? It spreads around like wildfire. So you have to be honest with yourself, right? And say, like, if it goes the other way, are you going to be okay with it, right? And you have to kind of have that honest conversation in your own head and with the other people at the school, right? I definitely, before making it official, had those conversations with Lenny, the boys varsity coach, had that conversation with Mr. Shine. Hey, I'm thinking about doing this. This is why, and just be upfront, be honest, and be confident, and know that, if you're applying for it and you think you're qualified, have those reasons and be confident in yourself.
That's great. And I think you kind of hit all the above there. I think especially applying within, and you mentioned it's just betting on yourself, being able to live with that. If they don't decide that you're ready for that, that you're still willing to do your job as an educator and still grow as a coach to be able to down the line do that, if not somewhere else. So awesome stuff, John. As always, a pleasure talking to you. But we got one segment left. We have our 2-minute drill.
I'm excited.
Yeah. So, I'm just going to kind of rapid fire a bunch of questions at you and, just kind of give me 1 or 2 word answers. I do have the right to challenge if I want you to explain something further, and vice versa. If you want to throw your challenge flag to explain an answer a little bit more, I'll give you an opportunity to do so. That's what I got to get. I got to get like a flag.
You got to
throw it like the segment. Exactly. All right, man. So I'm going to set the timer and we're just going to fire away as many as we can here.
All right,
rank in order of soccer, having either a stud goalie, a stud defender, stud scorer. What would be your rank top to bottom?
For me, it would be defender first, then scorer, then goalie.
Gotcha. Okay. Are you a type of coach that prefers a high scoring game, or are you more of the conservative 1-0, 2-1 type style games?
You might guess from the first one, but I'm more conservative.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Toughest coach you've ever coached against in any of the schools that you've coached at soccer wise?
Great question. Karen, I'm going to mispronounce her last name, Gilmet, the former Bishop Fenwick coach. Terrific coach.
Okay. Best team you have ever coached at Arlington Catholic?
Oh, great question. I would say the boys lacrosse 2011 team, league champion, deep playoff run, very, very talented team.
Okay. Okay. Who is the best girls soccer player that you've coached at Arlington Catholic at your time there?
Oh, this question's going to get me in
And I'll
trouble.
let you
Okay.
I'll let you throw the flag on this because clearly, yeah, you're gonna get into it.
I'm going to throw the flag on this, right? You'll get me in a little bit of trouble here. The best player, just like from a pure soccer talent wise, probably Katie Regan graduated. She graduated 2 years ago. Currently playing at Wheaton, midfielder, just a terrifically like ball skilled, talented player. Captain for me and 3-time league all-star. Just a great player. She also played with some talented. She's in a grade. Kaylee Moran, who was Katie was our midfielder. Kaylee was our forward that year. Is also playing collegiate soccer at Salem State. But Katie might get the slight edge there.
It's always a good debate to have several people.
It is a great. Oh, absolutely.
Shows what type of talent you have.
And again, a little bit, yeah. A little bit of recency bias. Maybe there are definitely some great players from my first few years as well. My first goalie, Jenny Corso, who was the goalie who I inherited. She was a senior my first year. Just a terrific goaltender.
That's great. Who would you say is your biggest coaching mentor?
Dan Brothers, who is the varsity lacrosse coach at AC, who I've been working under for 11 years now.
Wow, that's awesome. I didn't realize you guys worked together that long. Wow.
Yeah.
And a last question, this is more of like an inside joke that I think will make us both laugh. Has there been any practice schedule mishaps this year for girls soccer?
Yes. Are you kidding? Of course there have been. There are always scheduling mishaps. Are you kidding?
Just for the inside joke, when John and I coach football together, we'd always make a schedule to kind of be able to know when soccer's either coming on or going off and when football's coming on and going off. And no matter how many times we worked on it, there always was a scheduling mishap.
Always
a
a
third random
scheduling
team was there for something.
Oh, and you think it would be easier this year because there are only the 2 teams on the field, but we still get there's still always, let's call it, communication issues at times, you know.
Oh, it kills me.
Blame the guy who makes the spreadsheet, which I guess is me, right? But
it could be the problem. But in all seriousness, John, knowing you for as long as I've known you and just watching you coach, I've always admired, just kind of the respect that you have around that school, that community, but with your players. I mean, everybody knows who John Bolero is, whether it's in the soccer world, whether it's in the Catholic school world, everyone knows John Bolero. Everywhere I go, someone knows you. So it was great to have you on here, to have your knowledge. To me, just an all around great person to be working with kids at high school and helping them, kind of achieve their goals and get to that next step, whether it's on the playing field or in the classroom. So, I really appreciate you coming on today, and I was ecstatic. I really was that you.
Anthony, man, I'm just so honored to be invited. Looking at the list of coaches you've had and the few you have coming up after me that you've announced already, to be in such high company is, humbling, and I'm honored to be here, man. And I think you're doing a great thing, bringing to light some of the great things that are going on in Massachusetts high school coaching, right? So thank you for doing this. This is great.
Yeah, pleasure's all mine, man. I know how hard coaches work, and everyone deserves to have their story heard and talk about their program. And, everyone judges by wins and losses, and no one realizes the work that goes into it in the off season and how you're developing and how, you're really trying to be an all around role model. You mentioned that living your life the way that you want these kids to be committed and so on and so forth, you're making those same commitments, and it makes them a better person. It makes us a better person as coach, because, it shows us that we can time manage, and that when our heart's into something, you're devoted to it. So, like I said, just love having you on, love talking to you always. And, this was great. Thank you so much. And from Beyond X's and O's podcast, I'm Anthony Petralis, John Bolero, head girls soccer coach at Arlington Catholic. Thanks for coming on. And next week, we'll have another great guest.
Thanks, Coach.